Thank you for joining this segment of the Minority Marketplace. My guest today in the studio is Savanah J. Frierson. She was in town for South Carolina Book Festival, and she spoke on a panel for romance novels and was graciously willing to come by and stop by TME Studios. Ms. Frierson, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How about yourself?
To start out, I want to ask you the name, Savanah J. Frierson. Now, is that your real name or
Yes.
pen name? Because it sounds like an author's name.
It's mine. Give it to me 32 years ago come Friday. So all of it's mine, yes. Yeah. Okay. I've heard that before, funnily enough. So.
Savanah J. Frierson.
Yes, that's all mine. Yes.
Okay. This weekend you was at South Carolina Book Festival. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's this is the 19th annual, they say, of the South Carolina Book Festival, and it's put on by the South Carolina Humanities Council.
Okay.
And they invite national and some international authors to come to South Carolina for the weekend to host several panels and exhibit their books and talk to readers who are in the area. And I think this year they said something about 300 people will be here throughout the course of the weekend. So it's been a good weekend. They had kids. They have, it ran the gamut. It was a pretty diverse crowd, and I have enjoyed my experience there.
Okay. Now you spoke on a panel. Tell us a little bit about the panel.
The panel was called "It's a Love Story," and it was about bringing in authors that write romance or women's fiction with strong romantic elements. And so it was me and Olivia Bird. Her middle name is something I can never remember because it's very Southern. She's lovely though, and Shelley King. Okay. And Shelley King is actually from Orangeburg, where she now lives in California, and Miss Bird lives in Panama City, Florida. But they were lovely. It was a really good panel, moderated by Kiana Whitted. She's a professor at USC.
Oh, okay. Now, you have an extensive body of work. How many books have you published to date?
Books that are out or books that are published just in general?
Just in general.
At least 10.
Wow.
At least 10. Some are not in circulation anymore because the contracts have ended, or I pulled them off the shelves so I can shop them to publishers since I'm primarily self-published. But yeah, 10.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about, would you consider yourself a romance novelist, relationship novelist? Tell us a little bit about your work.
What do I consider? I write about love stories.
Okay.
So that it can be the love of self, the love of family, the love of someone else in a romantic sense, but just learning how to love and to be loved is what I write about, particularly from a Southern Black woman's perspective.
Okay, and that's a question I definitely want to ask you. A lot of your books deal with interracial relationship. Why is that?
Because, well, I studied interracial relationships, not necessarily romantic, when I was in college. And to me, being from the South and, having that history of segregation and, white supremacy, white dominance and all that stuff. But then a lot of our intimate spaces were very integrated. And the dichotomy that wasn't necessarily a genuine one in a lot of ways. And so I was always fascinated about how do we, ignore, or not necessarily even ignore, but just deal with all the societal structure of how we interact and then just get to the heart of somebody. And I find that writing interracial romance is a way to, in some ways, to keep me honest about my personal biases and how I move through the world potentially, but also just, to keep my mind open to finding love with whomever, regardless of what race that person is. So it's not so much anti-black men or what have you, because that's a concern my father has had. I have to tell him it's not about that, but it is about, being open to loving and being loved, especially in a context, in a country, in a society where, for black women, that is often hard to see or think that you're worthy of having.
Okay. Now, you mentioned your upbringing. Briefly tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what school you attended.
I'm from Blackwood, South Carolina,
Right.
which is just up the street from Columbia. And I went to, you want me the whole education, like from kindergarten
to college.
because I can shout out some, you know. But I graduated from Ridgeview in 2001, and then I went to Harvard and graduated in 2005.
Okay, now Harvard, what was your major?
I was African American Studies. Okay. Well, they changed it to African and African American Studies and English.
Okay. Cool. I believe.
Yeah.
All right. What are some of the things on your journey of being an author? You've written, like you said, 10 books. What are some of the things when you were writing that you didn't know that you now know? Some of the experiences that you've had that by writing about certain things you made say, wow, I didn't know that. Or maybe you've had fans come up to you and said, hey, I read your book and I felt such and such about what you said.
Well, I've learned that people really genuinely just appreciate a good book. I thought that, you know, only black women who are in interracial relationships would want to read about interracial love stories. That's not true. A lot of my readers that I've learned are, you know, older black women who are in monoracial relationships, and they love these books. And so they just, a lot of times I think it's just, they just love a black woman being loved. And so they really like those stories. Conversely, with being Plumville, I went to my old high school and spoke about it. They read the book, and I led a discussion on it. And in that group, it was mostly, you know, young men, you know, 14, 15-year-old young men. And they loved the book because they said it reminded them of their mother, or even though technically their mothers were also younger than these characters, but it was still just another perspective that I think they would have never gotten had they not, you know, read this book, and they enjoyed the book. So, you know, people just want a good story and characters with whom they can connect.
Wow, I like that. Books about just black women being loved. Okay, all right. Wanted to know, in this technical age, in the digital age, you are self-published, correct?
Yes.
How has that experience been? What has being a self-published author allowed you to do? What are some of the positives and maybe a few of the drawbacks?
I can release the book when I want. Which means I can get my money when I want. No, but it was good for me to learn how to put a book together. And so even if and when I do get another traditional contract, I know what to expect with how long it's going to take for the book, you know, from when I submit the manuscript to when it's going to be on the shelves. I'm not going to be like, when's the book coming out? You know, I know that they have to take it to the cover artist and get that approval. It has to go through several rounds of editing. You know, they have to figure out how they're going to market the book, what have you. So I think in that way it has taught me patience about what to expect. Keep realistic expectations for myself. On the other hand, though, you know, I absorb all of the costs, and not just financial costs. Everything that happens with this book ends and begins with me. So it's a lot of responsibility, but you know, this has my name on it, so I have to be sure that I'm okay with whatever has my name on it. This is representational of me and my thoughts and what I'm trying to convey.
Okay. Well, we have two of your books here today, being Plumville and the Beauty Within. Briefly give us just a quick synopsis of being Plumville. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Being Plumville is about two friends of two different races who are reunited on a southern campus, newly integrated southern campus in 1968 Georgia. Okay. And they have to deal with all of what that means. Because as we all know, 1968 was a pretty volatile year in terms of race relations, and you know, that was definitely the beginning of schools starting black studies departments, and Coralie was really big on that. That's one of her goals that she's trying to accomplish in the book. Benjamin Drummond is the son of a state judge, so he's, you know, entrenched in old white Southern tradition, and despite all of that, they are friends first and foremost, and the time apart didn't take away their friendship at the core, even though they had to work their way back to each other, but the essence of each other just didn't go away because, laws and society said that they shouldn't be together.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Now, I hate to ask you this, but out of all your books,
nope,
what's your
I'm
favorite?
not answering that. I already know what you about to answer.
What's your favorite?
You try to, what's
Nope.
my favorite?
Okay,
I don't have a favorite, but I will say that, Reconstructing Data Channing, which I don't have with me right now, that was the very first original story I ever wrote. And that was also the story that I wrote so I could graduate college. So I will say it's not necessarily a favorite, but it's definitely foundational.
Okay.
So without that story, there would not be these others, is what I say. So if you want to start, if anybody wants to see where I guess the genesis of all this started, they should start with Reconstructing Data Channing and Being Plumville, because those are the first two books. And then hopefully they can see the growth that I've done in the almost 10 years since then. Actually, 10 years. It's been 10 years since I submitted Reconstructing Data Channing. So hopefully there has been some growth that the readers can see.
Okay. Now, just a great follow-up question. Where can we purchase the books?
You can purchase them definitely on Amazon.com, or you can go to my website, www.sjfbooks.com, to see what other sites I have the books on.
Okay. Now, before I let you go, it's a lot of people out there that would love to write a novel, struggling to write a novel. Being an author who is 10 times published, what would be the most important piece of advice that you would give a young, upcoming author?
Stay true to your voice. Don't try to emulate someone else's, because you can't write someone else's story. You can only write yours.
Okay. Savannah, thank you for taking time to come by the
Thank
studio.
you for having me. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining the Minority Marketplace. And like always, if you have a book that you'd like to highlight on the marketplace, or if you produced a product that you would like to highlight, please give us a call at 803-619-3752. Shoot us an email at info@theminorityi.com.